Okay. Well, it helps that this camera is a little bit has a little bit of a red tinted filter because I'm already technically laughing a lot even before we started this episode. But yes, welcome. Yokoso Kanpai Chronicles. Welcome to Kanpai Chronicles, the podcast where we talk about all things Japan and or our observations of the world from a very, shall we say, yabai perspective, with your hosts Norman and
Holly.
And in this episode, I think we're going to talk about something relatively tame, but I just want to make a quick mention right before we start this episode. We went off the deep end to talk about, shall we say, the exploration of one's carnal desires. Basically, it was like I have like the time range here and on Audition, and it's like literally 15 minutes talking about anal. It's just hilarious. It's just dumb, and it's not even like dumb sex stuff. It's more on the what would compel us to do such a thing. What compels us to look at this, to look at one's butthole and be like, oh, I want to start intercourse from there instead, right? This time, or and then looking at it from a very religious perspective. But that is obviously not related to this episode. Although you could comment below if you're interested, and we could probably just like riff off of that for like a complete one-off thing. I don't know. But first of all, Holly, how have you been doing? Like, how's things on your end?
Not too bad. I mean, this is our, what is it? It's been a couple months since we've recorded something. I was traveling through August, a little bit, end of July through August. Just visiting some friends and family.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. It was really nice to kind of get away in between pandemic surges and see people I haven't seen in a long time. And like I went and saw Saba, one of them. We've talked about her before. She was at Rikyo with us. And that was cool. We got to just, chit chat about like the old days and stuff like that. And then since being back, I'm just adjusting to being back in fucking school and things like that. And, winter is coming. So the seasonal depression and all of that comes creeping in, but not too bad. Nothing to really complain about. Just getting a little more busy and trying to keep myself in a balanced state of mind. For some reason, talking about anal cheered me up a lot. but yeah, how have you been the past couple months?
I don't even remember how we started talking about. Oh, I do remember, but we'll put that aside. Yeah. First of all, shout outs to Sabs. We've talked about her multiple times throughout the show, but it's always I always feel really, what's the word for it, bubbly or giggly whenever we bring her up, because she's always brought a smile upon my face. Also some funny ass memories with her. So Saba, if you're listening to this, we love you. I mean, recently it's been picking up. Work has been picking up. Just like running a company with some guys, and there's been a lot of like huge changes in planning, etc. So like during the day I run a podcast company, so like there's this element of like, oh, we gotta manage the work and admin stuff, but then we have these times where we would just like be in a room or a Zoom room, and we would just brainstorm show ideas. So it'll be like the writer's room in Hollywood or something like that. We will be like, hey, what do you think about this show? Or what do you think about this episode? Who do you think we should talk to? Whatever. So that's been like, the energy we get from that kind of room has been pretty interesting. So we're trying to make the most out of that coming up, because I don't want to, not to get too deep into it, but I want to add more variety into the kind of work that I do, because the conversations I get from creatively melting with other people, where they're like, bouncing ideas off each other, it's just so uplifting. And especially during pandemic and etc., where we're all suffering to a certain degree in our own way. It's just nice that we could just set up a session and then be like, hey, what do you think about this? And then there's no judgment, right? We're just like exploring artistic observations together or ideas. So I gotta say that's been a recent highlight. There are some things I would personally complain about, but that's I feel like with time will heal that, and it's just more about just persevering through it. So overall, net neutral, a little bit positive.
Right.
Yeah, it's we're gonna have like that. It's gonna be consistently like that for the next like few weeks or months, etc. It's also a little bit surprising to me that my friend would tell me that. So we are recording this beginning of October. It's not far off from the end of the year. So
isn't that fucking weird?
Yeah, it freaked me the fuck out. So I was just like, shit, okay, we have to prepare for 2022. And I don't remember much about what's happening this year.
Dude, I feel like I think we talked about this one time, but like, I feel honestly like the past couple years, like, I don't know what the fuck has happened. Like, you know how like social media will give you kind of those like today blank years ago. I got one like the other day that was like 4 or 5 years ago on this like date or whatever that I went on, and I was like, has it been that fucking long? Like truly? Because stuff always feels like literally yesterday for me. Like even stuff like 10, 11 years ago now, I'm like, wait, what? Really? And then I feel like especially like the past like couple years have been kind of traumatic in at least some ways to probably everybody. And like, you know, trauma and stuff affects like your brain and your memory and stuff like that. So I feel like most people like sort of feel like there's been this like huge amount of time that was just kind of lost, which is weird because like when I think about it, like going into lockdown and doing all those things, it has had like its like benefits, at least like when I think personally, like in time that I was able to take and kind of like focus on myself and emotions and personal things that I was going through at the time when everything kind of started. But then it's also like I feel everyone almost is in this place of like, okay, what is next for like the future? Like there's so many things that like people want to see like change and hopefully improve, but I don't think anyone knows how to like get there yet. And then so when people are like, oh yeah, it's gonna be fucking 2022, I'm like, that doesn't even sound right. That feels like I'm going like so far into the future, like my brain can't even process that.
Yeah, it's that distortion of time when all this shit happened. And I don't know about you, but my sense of time has frozen since the lockdown stuff happened. And when I'm hearing you now, and I'm trying to contemplate like, okay, where am I from a temporal perspective to when 2022 is going to arrive? Because objectively speaking, I'm looking at this now. 2022 is in 3 months.
Yeah.
That's not that far away. When you say 3 months, that sounds like a lot closer than what I expected it to be. And if you were to ask me, like, you know, on one random day when I'm not looking at the date, like, oh, when do you think 2022 is going to come in? I'd be like, oh, maybe like 11 months away or something like that. And that's just how messed up it's been, because I'm just like, oh, that's just, wow, I'm not fully present or not fully aware, or I'm not sure if it's me trying my best to escape from the reality of how time is passing and I just don't remember much of it, or just a general dread, and not to dwell on this too much, because I'm sure that everybody has experienced this to a certain degree. It's just that it's become more important to note where we are where we feel, and then when we feel has changed, and then notice the arbitrage between that, the differences between that.
Yeah.
There's like a huge, how do you say that word, crevasse, or like a huge gap between who we were before lockdown and where we are now during lockdown. And one of those differences is how we perceive each and every day, because we're now limited by our ability to go outside or to meet people. Because like here's the thing, there's a risk of death, right? That's like the craziest part. Like we have this like fear of like we want to survive, hence why we try to turn off a lot of these perceptions in an act of survival. And then that's just been affecting us mentally, because we have to do that every day for like years now, 2 years now. So for anyone listening out there right now, if you're if you're listening to the show now or tuning in to hear some Japanese stuff, fret not. We will be covering that in a second. Just note that like, as much as we'd like to cover everything within Japan, we don't want to turn the show into a ticket to escape from what is actually happening in the world, because they are one and the same. Our experiences within Japan they're not as beautiful, and they're not as anime as you think they are. They're not as, great and fun and full of blooming sakura flowers and all that as you think they
we
are.
don't want to like romanticize.
For us, these are experiences that we've had that we've carried with us for the past few years, and we like to contemplate on them even now. So it's a very good cathartic exercise for the both of us, and we just like to share that with you. So if you want to reach out and have a talk about what's been happening in your life, reach out. Really, like, I don't mind talking about this. So yeah, safe space in the worst place possible. Was Kanpai swearing explicit shit, talking about anal in the first 5 minutes. Oh god.
No, but like that's I feel like that kind of just like obscene like energy is almost like the safest, like the people who are just kind of, which is funny because I can like talk this way because it's like with you and like I have an established friendship with you and stuff, but on my own it's like I'm not I wouldn't just kind of like go off and feel comfortable like bantering about like that. But when I see people who'll just kind of like talk about whatever, that makes me also feel like, oh, I can really like share my opinions here, like recently I've been trying to like get into streaming, and like a few people that kind of like pop in and out of like my streams, it's kind of cool because they feel really comfortable like sharing about like their like struggles and stuff and things that are going on in their life. And in between like all the like fucking banter and shit, it's like those are the kinds of things that I enjoy with like human interaction, because I do think regardless of how it compares to one another, everybody's dealing with their own, personal conflicts. No matter who you are, where you are, whether you've been given what some would consider like a really good like fucking deal at life or vice versa, everybody's got their shit. And I think people should be able to, like speak that truth. So
yeah, finding these obscene corners like the show or your live streams, not that I'm calling your live stream obscene. I have joined one of your live streams. That's pretty funny. It's like giving us permission to share just a little bit of our frustrations and burdens. So that's always a very healthy thing to do. Nothing is worse than bottling up such potentially harming thoughts and experiences. So it's nice to know that you can enter like a place where you can hear other people. You can like, you're a fly on the wall and you're listening to other people having conversations who are just, they have these kind of conversations who are so natural and, explicit or obscene or just so real and honest. And you're allowed to take in some of that atmosphere. So I invited everybody to seek that atmosphere, and if you have found such interesting atmosphere, to try your best to be part of it, right? And be
Mm-hmm.
to reciprocate that, like, to one another. It's a pretty beautiful gift. And speaking of beautiful gifts, let us bestow upon you the beautiful gift of the yokai of the week, or the yokai of this episode. Uh, it's not really the most beautiful, warming gift ever, because we're going to talk about demons and shit. But
Mm.
in this segment, we like to focus on um, a notable yokai from Japanese lore, just to get us into the Nihon mood. So, without further ado, my Yabai squad, let's us listen to Holly. What is your chosen yokai? I think you warned me before, but I'm kind of
Yeah,
gonna
I gave
prepare
you a
for this.
little heads up. Yeah, so if you're like just tuning in, basically, I think it was our last episode, we decided we were gonna go kind of take turns back and forth each episode and introduce yokai. Um, and I'm glad we were on the same page, because I was like, oh, we're talking about obscene things. This would be a great time to transition. So we've been using yokai.com. Just a simple kind of thing, just all the yokai. And I just clicked random yokai and went with the first one. So if you have the site pulled up, you might want to check out this photo. If
Okay.
you're listening in and you are up, like you don't really like kind of like semi-graphic sort of stuff, maybe don't don't look at this. Um, but this yokai is called Enkou. Um, and I'll just kind of read some stuff that it like has
Let me
going on.
find
So
it.
it says, oh, I'll wait for you to pull it up. We'll get your
Inko.
reaction. And
What the
cool. Yeah. Yeah. Um so it's quite ironic that we found ourselves talking about anal earlier because this yokai apparently has certain cravings that I will get to.
fucking
Um, so basically, the Enko are river dwelling yokai. They're found throughout the Shikoku and Chugoku regions of Japan. And they resemble monkeys or hairy kappa. And kappa, if you haven't heard of them, they're kind of like turtle sort of like yokai. Um, they're also like river dwellers, and every story is different, but for the most part, people see them as kind of like mischievous or even like dangerous to people. So these little boys are about the size of a 3-year-old child with bright red faces. And it says their long limbs are flexible and elastic, and if you pull on one arm, it will stretch while the other arm shrinks. And their fingers are tipped with sharp claws. They are covered in thick fur but are slimy and slippery like catfish. And they have a dish-like depression on the top of their heads. And kappa have that too. Typically, there's like water in there. And it says for their behavior, they're related to kappa, share many traits with them. They're very strong. They live in rivers and along the seashore and are excellent swimmers. They often appear at night in popular fishing spots. They are also skilled at transforming and can disguise themselves as human women, dolls, and other forms. They are they don't like metal objects. They will run from farming implements, and they dislike cows and horses, but they will attack them. So basically, the kind of like horror bit about these little yokai is that it says, you know, the Enko are not typically cute. Sometimes apparently you can run into a nice one if it's like turned into a doll and you poke it, it'll like giggle and stuff like that. However, they sometimes attack, rape, and even kill humans. And they are best known for brutally assaulting swimmers in order to obtain one of their favorite snacks, which is the fresh liver from a still living human. And so to acquire this liver, they obtain this by ramming one of their long, flexible arms up through their victim's anus and pulling out fistfuls of innards. So yeah, that's kind of what you see happening in the photo if you didn't pull that up for yourself. That's just a creepy water monkey reaching into this poor man's butthole. So yeah, that is our yokai, our yokai of this episode. How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
And then I feel violated. Look at this picture, it's so fucked up. Okay, like to describe the like like this picture, there's something majestic about it because it's just it's just a man drowning underwater, and then there's a monkey, and then the monkey has his arm into the guy's butthole, and there's
Like
blood
grabbing
coming
him
out the
by the
butthole.
ankle, yeah.
Yeah, and then like latching onto him by the ankle, and it just really encapsulates this description. And like, first of all, what the fuck were they smoking years ago to even imagine this? Like, oh, I'm swimming in an ocean. I hope a monkey doesn't ram his fist up my ass. Oh my god.
Well, I mean, it is possible that someone had that experience, you know,
It could
or
be.
or something similar. They have like primates in Japan. I don't know enough about those like specific regions, what animals live there, but someone could have been like assaulted, by a creature, and then stemmed forth this story.
Yeah, like it could be like an observation of a monkey that fell into the river and then attacked the nearest human, and then that was recorded as something so ridiculous it became lore. Because most of the time, like it was, I think we talked about this in an earlier episode where we were trying to explain. They explained that tsunamis were created by a giant catfish that would hit the land or
Oh
something
yeah.
like that, right? Yeah. So it's like, oh, they see a natural cause, and by they I mean Japanese people of those times. Like they see a natural cause and they're like, oh, we need to invent a character or an animal or a mystical animal rather, or a mythical one, to rationalize why this thing is happening, and then we need to turn it into an enemy. So it's like, oh, this catfish is a bad thing. We were scared of this catfish because this catfish is going to give us tsunamis, and this is probably the best way to be like, hey, I want to make an enemy out of the event where my butthole will be attacked by a monkey. So let's turn that into a story. And then, like, I mean, have you read the rest of the, like, at the end of it, there's a legend that says that a woman was raped by an Enkou, and there was a pregnancy, and they had that indentation, that depression on the head of the baby that was born, and they killed it in a bonfire. Like, whoa! Like these are some insane details.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have to say, like, this is quite horrific, and I definitely would not want a monkey to attack me up the pooper when I'm swimming in the river next time. But I'd say this scores quite high on our tier list of like
Yeah.
of our yokai.
Yokai you don't want to encounter.
Yeah, like it's just a bit, it's just a little bit too out there. Like when we're thinking about, like, I'm not thinking about monkeys when I'm swimming in the river, like in terms of dangers, right? Like for me,
Right.
we, like, I come from a native tribe, and we have a lot of legendary stories surrounding crocodiles because my tribe specifically, we tend to survive a lot from rivers, and our livelihood is based off of rivers. So crocodiles and snakes, like river snakes, etc., are our most like dangerous, shall we say, predators, like surrounding the jungle, unless you're actually deep in the jungles itself. So I understand if we have legends or myths surrounding the very animal that we are fighting against all the time, like that's part of the livelihood.
Right.
But then this like the rationale for this is saying that like there are Japanese people living nearby a river, and then there's a fucking monkey in the water, and they're like, shit, that's actually a threat to our lifestyle. Like there's a monkey swimming in there. Then again, there are monkeys bathing in hot springs in Hokkaido.
Right.
So there could be some truth that I don't know. Oh god, this is just a lot of information to take in. Like, oh my god, I'm not even prepared for this. Holy shit.
I know. When that like popped up just as my first random, I was like, all right, this is it. This is the one. Except now I'm kind of like judging myself in like a Freudian sort of way, because I'm like, oh, both of the yokai that I have chosen to talk about have to do with assholes. Like we have like the Shirime, and now we have the Enkou. And I'm like, is there something deeper going on in my mind that I have not explored yet? Should I sit down and like talk to my therapist about this? Like, hey, for some reason, I just keep thinking about yokai that have to do with assholes.
Have you shown your therapist? Have you shown your therapist like these like yokai pages? Be like, hey, you know, I've been talking
I just start
about
sending him
these.
emails.
Is there a pattern? Am I sensing something? Well, no one can beat the almighty Shirime, leading the top of the food chain of yokai at S tier or S tier, basically. But what do you think? What do you think this ranking should be? A freaking monkey that fists people for food.
Like on the horror scale, I feel like this is up there. This is grand. This is, I feel like what a way to go. Like you wouldn't die right away, you know, you'd be suffering. You'd probably be able to live and watch this thing like snack on your liver. Like,
yeah,
truly horrifying like experience. So on that, I would consider it like an S tier, like yokai, like wouldn't want to run into ever at all.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that as well. I was thinking like a very high A tier and maybe even S tier, mainly because so what scared me the most is not the it's not the fact that there's a monkey in the river, because I have a feeling there's bound to be other things that are going to be scarier to find in the ocean. What scares me is the level of pain, because there's multiple levels happening at the same time. Like if you look at the picture, I just have this picture on me, like
just staring at you.
It's just staring at it, right? The anger on the monkey's face is like scaring me. So, like, one, you are in pain because there's a foreign object going up your butthole, and two, your organ is being pulled out of your body. So that's two types of pain. And then three, you're drowning because you're in pain, right? So not only are you like taking in water to your lungs and then you can't get oxygen left to your body, your ass is in pain, and then your organs are being pulled out of your butthole. And then there's this monkey that is just like eating like your innards. Like there's like psychological pain in there somewhere. There's like a trauma, but then you can't even process that trauma because you're going to die from drowning as well. So yeah, like you said, what a way to go. I think from me detailing, I don't know if I should like do a warning about all the pain that I just described. I might have to. Okay, right. Like for me outlining all these details, I would probably put this as S tier. Like imagining the pain is actually freaking me out. I guess.
Yeah, very unsettling.
Yeah. How the fuck did you arrive at that one? Oh my god.
I just clicked random. Just random. This is just there existing in the random world of yokai.
You just like just random in the ass category.
Oh
my
well,
god.
we can switch on to more of a pleasant, calm.
Yes.
Calm calm variant.
let us get back to return to PG topics, because I think that's enough pain and horror and monkeys to think about for now. So
It is spooky season.
it is, yeah. We are preparing for Halloween, so why not spice up your life with some Japanese themed pain and
I'm gonna
horror.
dress up as an Enkou.
Please don't do Enkou things.
Just show up in Malaysia, knock on your door, dressed up as Enkou.
as a monkey. Just be like, you want to swim in the water. Like, oh, that'd be so freaky. Fuck. Oh my god. Oh. Right. Okay. Let's return to something more calmer, which is actually the point of this episode. And now I have to worry about like titling this episode because we've just spent the first, shall we say, quarter or half talking about something completely unrelated to this upcoming one. So coming up to let's put aside all the lore, the myths, and talk about more on the country itself. We're bound to have more and more people who are interested in life in Japan, or how to survive in Japan, or the culture, etc. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, since the start of the show, you've had someone reach out to you to say that they're going to be, is it moving to Japan soon, or like preparing to live there? So
Yep.
what did they say specifically?
She just got a job over there, so she is moving. I think this is her first time ever going. And she was just talking about like how stressful like packing to like go abroad is, because you don't know like what you should take, like what's important, what's not important. And I was like, oh yeah, like I remember feeling that like when I was both times like packing to go, because essentially you're, especially if it's for a job, you could be there forever. You don't really know. Like you're like, oh, maybe a year, maybe a couple years, maybe I'll, never come back. Maybe I'll love it. And so when you're going through your personal belongings and stuff like that, not only are you like, okay, what kind of stuff do I have to change to sort of adapt for maybe what Japan doesn't have that your home country does, but then also your personal things like, okay, well, I have space for this. Like, is this necessarily important? And so I thought it'd be fun to talk about kind of like what was going through our minds, like as we were like figuring out what to take, what not to take, or even like after we got there, stuff maybe that we wished we would have brought with us, vice versa, maybe stuff that we were like, we never used, didn't need, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. Like preparing for living in Japan. Although this friend of yours, like our circumstances may be a little bit different because we moved there to study, so there's a little bit of difference there. Moving to a job that you got there in Japan. First of all, congrats to the friend. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And second of all, yes, although it is stressful, in this case, stress, I think it's on the other side of the same coin as excitement, like because you are thinking about this. It is a major chapter in your life. You're moving overseas, you're packing, and you are, like you said, picking and choosing what you are willing to bring with you. I had similar thoughts, even though I knew that my term in Japan was 1 year only, and I guess like I didn't know at the time, but an entire year in the country is enough to change you for at least change you in a different direction, whether it's better or for worse. In my case, it was for the better. When I was thinking about packing, I think I actually made a conscious decision to bring less personal items with me. And for things like clothes, I decided to pack only a maximum of clothes for 1 week and then get more clothes there. So and the reason why, and maybe you have something like a thought on this, but like my rationale for that was that I knew this was going to be a chapter in my life where I'm going to be living a completely different one, because I spent like the last few years in Australia by then, and then before then was, in other countries, and I knew the beginning and end of those chapters involve different lives that I've lived, which meant that when I was thinking about preparing for a new life, I want to dissociate life in other countries from this new country I'm going to move into. So when it comes to personal items, the only personal items I brought with me were the items that I want to take with me to journal my time living in there. So like my laptop, so I can like store pictures, or my camera, or a pen and paper, etc. And or small mementos. Like if I want mementos, or like if I feel like I miss, because I've had those times when I miss life back then, like small mementos, but they're packable, like they're like small stored, like easy stored ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my rationale. But like, is there anything that comes to your mind when you're thinking about that?
For me, because I had like two experiences of packing. I had when we studied, and then when I went over there for the job that I had gotten.
Yeah.
So the first time when I was going for study abroad, it was pretty similar to you, where a lot of my like personal like trinkets, I would say, like more decorative stuff, I don't think I packed too much of those, because I had assumed like I would probably like get things in Japan, um, because like I'm a fucking nerd, and I was like, I'm probably gonna buy like all this like cute little shit. So I don't think I brought too many of those things. I remember I printed off a lot of photos to like decorate my room with, of like my friends and scenery and stuff like that, because like it was just like happy stuff. And even though I'm not particularly like, I love my country, but I knew there would be stuff like, of course, like I missed from like back where I grew up. So just some photos that I took of just like nature and things like that, things that I look at that make me feel good. I printed off a bunch of pictures to decorate my room with. Um, Similar to you, like I had my laptop for, like school and stuff, my camera, um, my stuffed animal that I have that just goes everywhere with me. And then I think the hardest thing for me was like notebooks and books. I think that was like what I struggled a lot with. Um, because I love like having like physical copies of books, and I like to read, and I love my stories. So I think I had like one of my bags was like books and notebooks. Um, which was just heavy and like a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And the second time I had moved, when I went over there for like a job, in that respect, I had actually kind of set that stuff aside to where I was just gonna have it like shipped. I didn't end up like staying long enough for that to happen, but that was sort of how I would have handled like that situation. It's just too much to worry about all that stuff in like your carry-on and travel luggage. Clothes, I was a little opposite, because I'm like a super like always stressed about money like kind of person. So I was like, I didn't imagine that I would have shopped as much as I did in Japan. I think when I came back to the States, I had actually like gotten rid of most of my clothes that I went with and brought back like clothes that I bought in Japan.
Mm.
Um so and then when I went the second time, I, cleaned things out, and I think I took just like a normal like amount of clothes. And assumed I would shop for like a more professional like wardrobe once I got there. Um what else is there? There was little stuff, because like I, always like to like research little things. Um, I think someone had told me like the voltage and stuff was different like in Japan. So I had bought like those little like converter things. But I remember in Tokyo it ended up not being a problem. Um all the plugs and stuff around Tokyo worked for the stuff that I had. But I'm not sure how it is in other maybe more like rural parts of the country. Someone had told me things like toothpaste and medicine were like really different. Um, so I had brought like my own like couple things of like toothpaste. So I think it's in Japan, is it fluoride? They don't have fluoride in their
Oh, really? I thought they
I
did.
I can't remember. There's something supposedly that American toothpaste has that the Japanese toothpaste doesn't. I because I just like to try things. I didn't mind like the Japanese like toothpaste. I didn't think you know. But some people are more sensitive to that kind of stuff. Um, Deodorant was something that someone had been like, "Oh, Japanese people don't really like sell a lot of deodorant or whatever." Um, so I'd brought like my own when I came to study. But they have like other stuff. I find their like little wipes and things that they have like quite convenient. They have this like product called Seabreeze, which is fucking beautiful. Just like fucking dries up that sweat like the fucking god power or something. I want to like get that shit here. Like, and it like feels cooling. Like, I don't know, like because Japan gets so fucking hot in the summer, they just have all these like fucking miracle working products. Um, and then I get really bad like migraines and headaches. So, one of my friends had said that Japanese like medicine, like cold medicine, headache medicine isn't as strong as it is in America. I can't I never tried like that medicine, so I can't like say. So I just brought like fucking my own big old stack of ibuprofen or whatever. Um, and then my prescription that I like have in the States. But you can get like a lot of that stuff once you're there. Like if you're going to be there, you can, set up with a doctor and things like that. So for me, like I have, I take like a generic for Lexapro. When I went to study, I just worked it out with my insurance to get like a whole year supply to take with me. Um, when I went over for work, um, my prescription, they give me like 3 months at a time. So I just took that with me and I was gonna get like a doctor and shit over there and just get a prescription in Japan. Um, but if you're gonna take medicine, definitely you need to do some research because there are some things, depending on your country, I know at least in America that they won't let you bring in.
Yeah.
So you gotta research a little bit on that just with ingredients and things. Um, but that's usually not like too bad. I think I might have talked about it in an episode before. The only customs issue I ever had was when I brought mac and cheese into the country. Um, so yeah, little things. Was there anything I wish I would have brought?
The American flag.
God, Jesus. No. Just like waving it around as I waltz about, bring my own pet bald eagle.
You can't bring a pet bald eagle into, into Japan.
You can't even own one in the States, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
The fucking freedom, my ass. But
On the medicine thing though, it is actually quite consistent because I've had to bring my own from Malaysia. When I was comparing medicine from here and there, because circumstances may be different because if you're working there, I'm not sure how it is for prescription and insurance, but we were given a lot of help in getting medicine if we were sick while at Rikyo, or while on exchange, rather, if that's a better blanket way to say it. And I've brought medicine from Malaysia here, brought it over there, and I have a tendency to do that anyway. Anywhere I go, regardless of time, there's like a big ass bag of like pills that we would like hoard over time. I don't know if your family does this, but like mine does. There's like a whole fucking bucket in the kitchen. Anyway,
a bucket of random pills.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, pills for coughing or pills for a flu,
or they're like in their packaging though, right?
Yeah. They're packaged.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm picturing just like a bucket with just like pills. Like,
oh no.
Dumb. Like, how do you know what's what?
They're labeled and sealed. Okay. It's not just like a bunch of like fucking pills, like just en masse.
Just like grab one and hope.
just stick a handful into my mouth. Anyway, no, they're all sealed and they're all labeled, etc. And effectiveness may vary because it's been a long time, and maybe there's like expiry dates, etc. But I would bring them over like a whole pack, and I remember specifically trying out the medicine there, and it felt like there wasn't really that much of a difference. And I've had talks about this with other students as well, notably the American students, especially in semester 1. So this is before you came in. Even they were like, "What the fuck is this shit? Like, there's no difference. There's no, like you said, there's no ibuprofen. I don't think they even have ibuprofen in Japan. Although I didn't even know about the word ibuprofen until I met American students. So that's pretty interesting. And when I saw the strength of it, it was like almost twice as strong. So for us to have bodies that are used to that much of a prescription for standard conditions of sickness, all of a sudden you're given this like weak sauce medicine. We don't know if that's going to be effective. So like for anyone who's listening in, one of the things you just cannot skimp out on is definitely medicine. Like I think you would trust your source, your home country's medicine, more so than the medicine of like not even just Japan, just like in general, right? Like of your destination country, way more. And then you can find prescriptions, like you said, like seek assistance from a doctor and cross compare, like, okay, these are my medications. Where can I find similar ones, and where can I find similar ones of similar strengths? Because that is what my body is used to. Because medical professionals are way better at providing that for you. Most of the time, at least in Japan's context, the medicines that they prescribe you, they're very generic in their dosage. So most of the time they would play a more conservative role by offering a weaker dosage. So may not be for everybody. So fair warning right there.
Yeah, what I would like recommend is if you have something like in my case, like antidepressant or something like that. When I came the second time for work, I just had my doctor here in the States give me a copy of my prescription that I would be able to give when I saw a doctor in Japan. Like, this is my dosage, this is what I take, this is what my doctor said. So if you have something like that, that is something that you take daily for whatever, situations that you have going on, I would definitely bring any copies of those prescriptions from like your home doctor, just to, be safe and make sure everything's on, the same page. And like, I think especially in this regard, if you're moving to Japan, and then depending on what your like language ability is, if you aren't super confident in say dealing with things that are what's the word, like kind of more serious, don't be afraid to ask for help. Like a work colleague, your boss or whatever, everyone is like super helpful and understanding. There was a time where I had to go to the hospital in Japan, and my Japanese isn't I remember like taking like a bunch of notes before going, like of like how to say certain symptoms and things like that. But Yui, our like kind of dorm like RA, she went with me and just did all the talking and translating, which was fucking amazing. Um, which makes me remember that again on like fucking god products in Japan. Did you ever have just like Pocari sweat, like when you were like
Yep.
hungover or sick?
Yeah.
Fucking elixir of life.
Yeah.
Like fucking dorm mom, when I came back from the hospital, she had this like care package for me. And she just had like all these bottles of like Pocari sweat. And I was like, I had heard about it, but I hadn't had one yet. So I was like, it was like the only thing I could like keep down. And like rejuvenation. And I think I was talking to people about it and they were like, oh my God, have you ever drank that like after a night out? And I was like, what? So I started drinking it like the next day, like after partying. And I was like, the fuck is in this shit? This is like fucking amazing. Whenever I see it like at like a store, like an Asian store or something in the States, I'm like getting that, saving that for a rainy day.
Yeah. It's Pocari Sweat is a nectar of the gods when you're there.
Mm,
It's like the most well-known sports drink in Japan. To give a comparison, so in Malaysia we don't have Pocari Sweat, but we have something similar called 100 Plus, and 100 Plus is essentially the same. It's an isotonic sports drink. It's a little bit sweet. It's a little bit carbonated, and it's supposed to give you back those electrolytes. I don't know why Pocari Sweat is way more effective. I don't know what they put in there.
yeah,
It's
I should
probably,
like look at the ingredients.
yeah, it's probably some kind of like yokai designed to give you more energy or some shit. I don't know, but it's really really good.
Jizz of the gods.
Oh my
I'm
god! Fucking hell!
sorry, that just kind of just kind of slipped out.
That and sweat for the body, you know. Pocari means
Yeah, in the
stick. Anyway,
States,
yeah.
yeah, in the States we have like Gatorade, Powerade. I think they have like Pedialyte, which is I don't think have I had it? Yeah, like Gatorade and Powerade, I feel like I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like they might have like a lot of sugar, so I think it's kind of like back and forth. Like it is good for your like electrolytes, but I'm not sure if I don't know. It's nowhere even fucking close to like Pocari Sweat
Yeah, it's a
or
really
the
good
flu.
all-purpose drink.
Yeah, guy had the flu a couple years ago and got my hands on some Pocari Sweat, and I was like, yes.
It's such a strange like solution, even though it's supposed to be for sports. But yeah, for sure, that's a huge recommendation, and I think this is like one of the many things, one of the many conveniences in Japan that people moving to Japan may not be aware of. Things like, oh,
Mm,
if you're feeling sick, Pocari Sweat is a potential drink to consider when you're like you want to recover because you want to recover some of those like nutrients, etc. Ukon as well, that drink that protects your body from alcohol. Assuming that you are getting a job in Japan with a Japanese company,
mm.
there's bound to be some involvement with alcohol, and if you want to protect your body from it, or you could just say no, but I don't know if you may be in a position to do so. But let's say that you are drinking and you don't want a hangover, you would drink Ukon, right? You would drink this
Mm-hmm.
like sweet potato drink that actually tastes not that bad, but then all of a sudden the next day you feel great. You feel
Mm,
fantastic. I wish they had that here, also all over the world. I don't know why they're like hoarding all these secret drinks in Japan, and I'm just so annoyed that I can't access them. When we consider what to prepare for physically, one of the things that I wish I knew more about before I moved to Japan is the banking system. Like I wish I knew about that
Oh yeah.
way
Yeah.
more, because I had a lot of trouble in the very beginning.
Yeah.
So some students were fine with the usual. We've covered this in a different episode on the convenience stores and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Some students were fine with the 7-Eleven ATM solution, but there are times when your card may be denied at an ATM, or you just can't get access to your money if your account is overseas. Like that's a potential thing, and it has happened to multiple
Mm-hmm.
people. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a really worrying thing, especially when you're a foreign country. All of a sudden, you can't get
Ugh,
access to your
right.
money,
Right.
and for people like yourself, you said you'd be more conscious about money, right? So like you don't want that shit to happen.
Mm-mm.
So I wish I knew the banks that would support foreign students or foreign workers from the get-go. Some
Yeah.
banks don't do so on certain conditions. Things like
Mm-hmm.
if you're only there for one semester, some banks will just say no. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you or if you need like greater usage of the what are the words for it, like the different features that a bank can provide, like services, etc., financial services,
Mm-hmm.
then some banks would provide it and others don't. And then they also depend on things like your income or your etc. Some of the documentation for that is not that accessible unless you have perfect
Mm-hmm.
Japanese. And if you have
Yeah.
perfect Japanese, I think you'll be fine with like just researching it on your own. It's just that when you have less than conversational ability, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
My only advice here is if you are staying for more than 6 months, so basically if you are staying for 2 semesters or more, if you're studying or if you're actually working for long term, go with Shinsei. Shinsei is like the best bank from my experience because they actually have English documentation. So that's like, first of
Mm,
all, like that saved my life. Oh my god. But yeah.
yeah. Banks I don't know too much about, like, at all. I remember Sid actually
Mm.
took me and Anna to a bank and like set up like bank accounts because Sid's fucking pata pata and he can like do whatever he's got to do over there with his fucking fluent ass Japanese. Um, but I don't think I ever really used it that much. Um, I remember opening an account because I didn't want to deal with like the fees, like the ATM fees to like draw from my bank back home. Um, but with Japanese banks, I think it is still like this way. I don't think it's changed. But they don't have as many like conveniences, at least like the American banking system does. Like we have like apps and online banking and stuff like that. And it's very easy to kind of move our money around as we need to. Um, in Japan, I couldn't like do any of that stuff with like my bank, and to figure out how to like wire money back and forth, it was going to be, more expensive anyway than it was to like just pull it out from the ATM with my card. So I never really like used it. I think the only time I used my bank account was like towards the end, where you have like all your fucking collection of random ass like coins, like your fucking ichi yen. Um, because like in Japan, it's like, a money based system. And so, or like cash based for the most part. And so a lot of students, we just have these fucking coins because you don't want to carry them around all the time. And so I had acquired some. I think Saba, like someone had left Saba all of their coins from your guys' like first semester. And then Saba gave those coins to me when she left. And so my second semester, not only did I have all of my own fucking coins I'd been like throwing in like random drawers and shit, but I had all these other coins from like semesters past. And I was like, the fuck? And I took a grand adventure to some bank um and returned it. And I think like I made like I think it was a couple $100 that was just in these
Oh my
coins.
god.
And I was like, damn. But I remember like trying to, like speak in Japanese to these people about like, I need to like convert my coins. They're just like, this fucking, what the fuck, shady like bag of a coin. Um, but yeah, I think if you go over there for a job, a lot of companies will help you set that sort of stuff up. And again, if they don't like outwardly offer you that, just ask. Um, and people would be more than happy to like help you. That stuff is so confusing. And you know, like Norman said, a lot of places, at least that I know of, they don't really have other language support. Um, so it's better to be, you know, safe than sorry. Take, you know, a boss or a coworker with you that's fluent in the language to make sure, you know, you understand everything and get everything set nice.
Yeah, the access to documentation is just the barrier is a lot higher because language ability has that kind of requirement when you want to do things like opening an account, etc. And also Japan loves contracts. So if you're thinking about getting a
Yes.
phone, or if you're thinking about, oh my God, setting up a phone. Oh my God, I just remembered the headache from getting a bloody SIM card. Shit. Which I'll cover that in a minute, but like really, if you can get a support system to help you out with setting up a bank, I think it's just way easier. Take it from people who've had to do it on their own, and then they're just like they're trying to like, you know, hand signal opening an account and all that crap.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's what I had to do in the first time that I went out there, and my Japanese still wasn't good at the time in first semester. So yeah, okay, no, huge rant here. First of all, SIM card. Oh my God, getting a phone is such a shitty process to go through. So I'm gonna call him out. Okay, so Jason from one of the previous episodes, as mentioned, shout outs to Jace from Team Smash, has this ongoing thing, or had this ongoing thing with a phone that he was put into contract with on arriving in Japan. So it was a phone contract with a company, and then the company provided him an Android phone and a SIM card. So he has a Japanese phone, right? Japanese phone number. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. But the thing is, this contract lasted longer than him staying in Japan. So he was paying for stuff even after he left. So there's this whole
the
debacle
average
of,
is 2 years. Like I
yeah,
think like 2 years is the minimum contract.
Yeah. So it's really difficult to get a valued contract for a short-term stay. If you are someone staying in, try your best to stick to the data only SIM card that you can get from oh my God, my mind is blanking out on that same building that we've been talking about where you can get alcohol on the 4th floor.
Oh fuck.
Anyway, big camera. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, big camera.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, oh my God.
I'm like picturing the red like sign with white letters, and I'm like, fuck,
Yeah.
what is it?
I'm picturing the red building. I'm picturing the alcohol in the red building. Okay, sorry guys. It's like past midnight for me, so I'm a little bit tired. Anyway, yeah, as I was saying, you can get data only SIM cards, and that works well for like 90% of things that you need to do. If you are only for a short-term stay, you'd only need data, and then you can find Wi-Fi or etc. in all those places. So like the data you can only be used, like it's best to be used for messaging and for emergency, and that's more than enough for most of the things you need to do if you're only staying for short term. So I highly suggest not getting into a contract if you're staying for short term. That being said, if you are staying for maybe longer than a year, you might be able to find an okay contract. Maybe not for like a phone, like a physical phone, but maybe a SIM card contract, and then you can figure it out from there. That's probably way more valuable, because after seeing my friend's experience with phone contracts and then just looking at the available options for phone contracts, like you said, they're like 2 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I didn't want to deal with any of that because my term was 1 year only.
Mhm.
So I just decided to get data only SIMs every 2 months, every 3 months, and then just went really frugal on the data that I was using. And it's not like I was
Mhm.
watching YouTube videos on the train or anything like that anyway. I was just, the
Yeah.
most that I was using was Google Maps and Line, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Typically, like, that's what most people will use. I got pretty lucky in the phone department because I think my company that I was going through was Sprint, and they had just started like an international sort of plan. Um, so check with your like home provider if you're going like short term, because I was able to add this like Japan plan for it was only like $5 extra a month, which was fucking great. And I could use everything over there. I could call, because I have like unlimited everything in my plan. So I could call back home. I could use, Wi-Fi and data everywhere. It was perfectly fine. If you're moving to Japan, like long term, then there's going to be things that you need a Japanese phone number for. As a student, we didn't really have to worry about that stuff. We technically had a Japanese phone number because we had those like phones in our room. But all that stuff, like Wi-Fi and various things, those sort of stuff was taken care for us. But if you're moving there for like a job or something, you're going to need a Japanese phone number to be able to set up certain things for yourself. Um, if you have like a nice friend, I mean, I guess you can ask if you can like use their phone number. I think there was something that I tried to do that I needed a Japanese phone number for. I think Misa set it up in her number for me. I can't remember what that was, but there was something I ran into that I needed a Japanese phone number to do, and Misa helped me with that. Um, so yeah, if you're long term, you're eventually going to want to do that. When I moved over there for my job, um, the company that I was working with offered us kind of like a deal on like a SIM card. So I basically had like two phones because I had like my phone with my like American plan and like all that stuff that I could do everything with. And then this other phone that I had a SIM in, like it was really cheap. It was just like $10, like $10 a month for me to have just like a phone number, basically. That was just gonna be my stupid phone that I use because everyone, like all my work, like colleagues and stuff like that, just used a line and everything anyway. So I didn't have, at least to the few months that I was there, I didn't have the need to switch over completely yet. But if I stayed longer, like obviously I would have. I just had more time still left on my contract from my home country, and I didn't want to be paying for both. And so I was just going to wait for that contract to run over before I switched. But yeah, that shit gets confusing. I remember a lot of friends having trouble finding like SIM cards and things like that, running into like the two-year contract like sort of deal a lot of places want you to do.
Yeah, it's not friendly to short-term stay people.
Mm-mm.
And also there's a lot of like prerequisites like that phone number,
Mm-hmm.
etc., for more services.
Mm-hmm.
And we are touching on the surface level things here, like different ways of
Mm-hmm.
identification, like a bank account, phone number, etc. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
it's going to escalate if, and maybe you've already actually touched on this before, like if you're going to find an apartment to stay in, or if you're
Yeah.
going to, you know, you're going to start something and then you need like a bank statement or whatever it is, or bills to pay, which was a whole other thing that you need to understand,
Mm-hmm.
which we covered slightly the convenience store episode, where it is the convenience store for a reason, where you can just pay everything there. It's just that when we're talking specifically about preparing for living in Japan, sometimes there are processes you cannot avoid. Things like these contracts, things like these things that require like a paper, and like you got to sign it, and then this documentation, and these pre-requirements, like staying for this amount of time. So do your due diligence when you're preparing for these things. When you're bringing things from your, to be honest, more than stressing out over the packing of our items, because you can, like, in the end, you can just get these items in the country that you're going to live in anyway.
Right.
More than that, and you're about to do that anyway because you're going to make new memories in this new place. It's the logistics that I would stress out over, more so than like what jacket I'm going to buy when I'm there, or like what jacket I should bring. That being said, if you are coming in from, and this is specifically for people coming in from maybe Asian countries near the equator, a reminder that Japan is a 4-season country, so make sure to actually prepare with like winter clothes and shit, because there's bound to be some people that are like, oh, okay, it should be fine, and then they come in and it's like fall, and they know that fall is a nice season, but then it's like 10 degrees less than what they're used to, and all of a sudden they're woefully underprepared. And I've had family friends who have done that on holidays. I really don't want it to happen to people who are going to be living there for a very long time. So yeah.
And if you're coming from like anywhere in America, even if you think your state is hot or humid, you have not experienced humidity until you've experienced fucking Japan in like end July, August. Like, anytime anyone is complaining about humidity, like anywhere I've been in the States since coming back from Japan, I'm like, no, this is nothing. Like, like you hear people complain about the Japanese summer, and it's not an exaggeration. It is like you feel like you are like swimming in the air. Like it's disgusting. So prepare for that. Like if you're someone who like forgets to, hydrate, make sure you always have like something on you, like water, something with electrolytes, because you're gonna feel it. Especially if you're really sensitive to that stuff. I'm pretty sensitive to the heat. So when I'm over there, like I constantly have to be having something, otherwise I'm just gonna fucking pass out like on the ground. Like it's no joke. They lose quite a lot of people to like heat stroke and stuff.
And you know what's the solution to that? Fucking Pocari sweat. Boy. Yeah, boy.
They have all kinds of like good treats. The last time I was there, my host mom, I don't know what they were called, but they're like those little packets that like freeze, and there's like a little gel type thing in there. She was always giving me those, like anytime I would leave the house, like, you need to have this. And those were a fucking godsend. They have all kinds of stuff. I think they even have like cooling like patches and stuff like that. They design, like, especially if you're in like a professional sort of job, they make clothes, like professional clothes made out of certain materials that are supposed to be like more breathable as you're going about your summer days.
Yeah, like summer suits and winter suits, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the American equivalent would be like merino wool. So you'd have clothes that are so breathable that you walk around and sweat in, and it just doesn't smell because it absorbs it pretty well. It's anti-wicking, and then all these attributes. Japanese people really do make sure to invent things for the convenience of the people living on within the country. If you have a really hot summer, cooling pad, cooling gel, sunbrella, sunscreen, and lots of other things. Like, like those like semi see-through white hoodies that a lot of like
Yeah.
gyaru girls would wear at the beach to make sure
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
they keep their skin in check, etc. Those can also
Yeah.
help really well.
Or the like older ladies, they wear those like
Yeah,
sleeves.
yeah, like almost like lace like level, and
Mm-hmm.
it's to reflect a lot of the sunlight because
Mm-hmm.
people have been thinking about this a lot. So when you're thinking about a four season country like Japan, there's a lot of locations where extreme versions of those seasons tend to occur. So how do you prepare for that? And you can find a lot of the answers actually right there around you. It's just being more aware of how, like, if you just
Mm-hmm.
take a look around and be like, oh, okay, um, people are starting to wear less, or they're starting to wear a specific type of material for their shirts, etc. I should probably prepare and buy some of that. Like that's probably really good. To give a better comparison for summer, so in KL, it's like maybe 30s, 30 in the range of 30s for degrees Celsius plus humidity, and it can get pretty humid. I have to breaststroke across the street. That's how sweaty I can get. So when I thought that like I don't have to worry about sun and stuff because I'm living in Malaysia, it's like it's gonna be like that the whole year. And I go to
Mm-hmm.
Japan. Summer in Japan is no joke. It's not
Mm-mm.
funny, guys. It's not funny. We have had reached levels of humidity similar to here. What happens is that the heat can go way higher, and we're talking
Mm-hmm.
like 40 something degrees. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if I can like convert it to Fahrenheit at the moment from the top of my head. And I think it's like close to like Texas weather, if I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went like in the middle of summer, I went to Osaka, Hiroshima, and Okinawa. So that's like getting closer to the equator. Oh my god, I was not prepared for that kind of shit because I did not have sunscreen, and I my clothes were just simple cotton shirts, so that shit stank. And when you're in Okinawa and you're like camping near the beach and whatever, it's just you know heat and humidity and all that
Mm-hmm.
sort of
That's
thing. And
salty.
yeah, and also like the summers there are so great because there's no sun, so it's like direct sun on you, which is great when you're at the beach, but it's like that's gonna kill you over time,
Mm-hmm.
your skin specifically. And I went with my Dutch British friend, so shout out to Josh from Team Smash. And he he was so sunburned that his shirt was sticking to his skin and it was in pain. Like
Oh.
it hurt to wear a shirt. That was how in pain he was. So if you don't want that happening to you, I highly suggest that you wear like proper clothing as well as like
Mm-hmm.
getting your skin protected. Because when I came
Yeah.
back and I think like this is when I met you, right? When I came back from summer and then it was entering the second semester, I was let's just say I was a lot darker in skin tone than I am
Mm-hmm.
normally.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just came back from this like adventure out into the sun. That was how bad it was. I think my skin was peeling. And there
Yeah.
is nothing scarier than a Southeast Asian dude with his skin peeling. That's just how strong the sun was. So yeah, anyone, if you're aware about the sun, just be prepared.
Yeah. I wasn't prepared for that either because um I like half my family is like Sicilian, Greek and stuff. So um I've never had like a very like bad sunburn or anything. I can get quite dark in the summer, and at the most like I'll get like a little pink in like the typical areas like nose and cheeks or like shoulders. But I'd never really been like burned. And I remember going to the beach my second semester, and I even like usually like in the States and stuff, I'm not too like concerned about like sunscreen and stuff, even though like you should use it. If I forget to like put it on, I don't have any like big consequence. Um, you went to Japan and my friends were like sunscreen, da da da, and I was like, okay. And they were like, make sure like you do it really good, like you don't want to get sunburned. And I was thinking like, oh, it's just kind of like a cultural thing. But you know, I still made sure I like put it on really good. We weren't even out there that long, I don't think. And I was like lobster burnt. Like, no joke, like fucking red as shit. And it like hurt so bad. I had never like experienced like sunburn before. And I was like, oh my God, this is awful. Fucking miserable. And I also think like, especially if you're living in the city too, because I've also never been as white as I was in Japan. Like both extremes. Like I was either like a fucking red little lobster or like a pale ass ghost. Even when I like see pictures from now, I'm like, damn, like my skin is that white. But because like depending on where you're at, like we were in the city, so you're not really like running around in the sun. And when it is hot, I feel like our like with the Japanese heat, your mind is like find shelter. Like you don't want to be in the sun. So yeah, just be careful with it. It's not a joke.
Yeah, and just to touch on winter a little bit, it really depends on the region for that. Like in Tokyo, it doesn't really snow, and I think wasn't there recorded snow only recently, a few years ago, and then the last time it actually snowed was like 20 or 30 years ago or something like that. I remember there was an article on that covering up, but it was winter varies across the region, so this really depends on which part of Japan you're going to be moving to. If you're in the city, maybe it's not that bad. Just standard winter practices are more than enough. But if you're going to go to somewhere like Aomori or Hokkaido,
yeah.
Oh, wow. Firstly, it's beautiful. But secondly, it's gonna get pretty cold. You might wanna prep up for that if you're not used to winter. If you are used to winter, I'm sure that you'll understand once it gets to like minus 10 degrees or something Celsius, minus 10 degrees, that the snow coverage gets quite thick up there in the north, and you just have to be wary. Although, for convenience sake, and this is for Sapporo specifically, they have taken care of that aspect by building an underground version of the city, so you can navigate throughout the whole city in the tunnels.
That was wild.
Amazing. I love that part. That's actually my favorite part about Sapporo. Like just the thought of like standing in the middle of the city and you're walking around, and then just knowing that there's like a whole population of people walking underneath you. That's just pretty cool. Mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, winter I was surprised because I'm in the Midwest and stuff, so we can have like mild to extreme winters. Tokyo was definitely like on a mild end. I think the year I was there we had like one snow that was like had some issues with trains and stuff that morning. But the snow the year I was there, like it didn't typically like stick. It mostly becomes kind of like a slush. And everything's just like wet and cold. But I didn't find like the temperature to be that bad. Obviously it can be like cold on the face and stuff, but it wasn't like as frigid as I feel it typically can get here. Hokkaido though, like the snow was fairly comparable to like how like I could experience snow like in the Midwest. But it was a lot colder. Like I remember wearing like 3 layers walking around, especially at night, and like still being cold. So if you're going to be more north and like you have no experience with winter, just make sure you're stocking up on your layers and things. And again, like convenience with Japan, you can buy like little like heating packs and stuff to like put in your like pockets and stuff. I would like put those in like my tights and stuff
Yeah.
to keep like my legs warm and everything. There's lots of stuff you can do.
Yeah, you can set up your own like convenience pack by just having all these like available packs in your backpack or purse or something, and be like, oh, is it getting cold? Okay, I'll set up like a heating pack and put it in my pocket. These hand warmers like work so well, especially when you're up north.
Oh, I was just like remembering like how interesting I thought it was. Not so much when we were in Hokkaido, but in Tokyo in the winter when like girls fashion and stuff, it's still like you see so many people in like skirts and shorts and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? But then I remember kind of like adapting to that. And I remember coming back to the States, and that was just a style that I liked, and people were like in the wintertime, like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, it's cute.
Fashion first.
Yep.
It really is that. Like, it's just
Beauty is
leggings
pain.
and that's it.
Yeah.
It is a good pain. And I think that really brings to mind I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, preparing one's mentality for living in Japan. Like, we've covered all of the potential conveniences, what to bring, etc. For me, one thing that I thought to prepare for mentally was my dependence on the language at first. And I don't know if that's me projecting like my ability in speaking the language because I was studying it before, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to suffer because I'm not that good, or I don't know if I had any dreams about making many friends in Japan, but then I'm not that good at speaking it, so I'm going to have trouble. But I think I made a mental note about making greater emphasis, or having a greater emphasis on the Japanese language as soon as I moved there. And I think that's mainly because of the assumption that maybe I'm going to meet a lot of people that won't speak English that well. So that was one. But then, ended up being in Tokyo. So it's not like people don't speak English. It's just that there's a lot of conveniences that are better served once you speak the language. Sure. But I think maybe I exaggerated it in my head, whereby I'm going to be a very lost person if I just don't speak a single word. But then it wasn't actually that bad. So like that was one thing, and maybe the other was just those dumbass anime impressions or predictions that like everybody has this like almost romance high school trope, but then everybody's like, or whatever, or like everybody acts like that, etc. Right? I needed to get that broken, and I remember thinking like, okay, obviously it's not going to be like anime. Obviously it's not going to be like that. I'm not that stupid. But maybe I was hoping, because it was something I defaulted to. My understanding of the term living in Japan or life in Japan, the only reference was the shows that I watch, which is of course pretty short-sighted. But I think I also made a mental note rather, that if I was thinking that way, then I needed it to be broken as fast as possible so that I can see the reality of it when I arrive.
I always think that's something like interesting, because I feel like you hear about that the most when it comes to like the foreigner's perception of Japan. You often find that experience that people have this very like romanticized or kind of like anime sort of like thought, but I didn't have that. And I don't know if it's just because like I don't know how it is in other countries for people that are more like otaku. But in the States, at least as far as my experience went, I like there were always kind of those people that were I hate like wording it this way because everybody has their interests and stuff, and I don't want to like shame, but like people that are a little more like cringe, like they want to talk in like a super kind of like high pitched like anime-esque like sort of voice, and they really kind of idolize things. Like I remember recently, and actually maybe we could do like an episode on this because this was a little enlightening to me, but I was researching autism in Japan, and I was seeing some posts by autistic people who were either wondering if they could go to Japan, and how they would fare there and things like that. And I did see some posts, or they might have just been trolls and things, but there were some posts that were saying like, oh, Japan, like is really accepting of people that are like really into dolls, and maybe act weird and stuff in public. And I was seeing a lot of people have a bit of a misconception about Japanese society. There's what's portrayed to us in the West, and that's just not the reality. Um, and especially in a level where you're getting into how disabled people are treated. I thought that might be a good thing to talk about, but I didn't really have that going into Japan. I think I was more actually on the other extreme, where I thought that everything was like super put together and everything was accounted for, and people there were super serious, super smart, blah blah blah. And I think again, that's another way that Japan can be portrayed to other countries, because it can appear that way on the surface. But I think we talked about this in a different episode. We were talking about like culture shocks and stuff,
Yeah.
where I was like blown away, like, oh, like Japan fucking, it deals with all the same shit like any other country does, like the societal issues and things like that. Um, things aren't as clean cut as they like appear to be like on the surface. There's a lot of things happening, though. There are definitely still the places like where you can go and geek out, like Akihabara and stuff like that. Like you can get your sort of anime-esque fantasy world sort of experience. They definitely leave a lot of room for you to go do that, with like certain themed cafes and stuff like that. And I would say if you're going there as a tourist, fucking geek out, like live your dream. But if you're going to move there for a longer term, you should definitely kind of check like your expectations. One of the best advice I was given before studying abroad was to really try not to have expectations. And I think that really helped me as far as adjusting, because I really tried to like internalize that, and sort of prepare myself that anything could happen. The second time I went to Japan, I had expectations on how work would go, how my situation would go, and you know how that situation went for me. um uh, you know I went in with expectations, and all of those things were not met. um so I would definitely recommend don't have expectations, like prepare yourself for anything. um Research what you can, but if things are like every experience is, it's always going to vary. Like just because everything you read says Japan is one way, it doesn't mean that that's what your experience is going to be like when you get over there.
Yeah, the big thing there is the awareness of your experience possibly going in these directions, and then you figure
Mm-hmm.
out what to do then, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the convenience store system or the banking system, or what you should bring, what you should not bring, but more so the cultural implication or the mentality of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, whenever we, and I think I think there's a psychological explanation for this. Most of the time, whenever we harbor expectations for anything, it is in preparation for how we will act when arriving at that point. So
Mm-hmm.
when we create expectations, we are formulating a way to protect ourselves when we are in the midst of that environment. As an
Mm-hmm.
example, if it's someone that's going to move to a foreign country, of course you're going to freak out about it or stress out about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or of course you're going to research all about it and then come to conclusions, because conclusions harbor greater clarity more so than having no expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is true that when you have no expectations, it's a lot easier to be open-minded and more receiving of what's around you when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes you can't help but have some level of expectations, just
Mm-hmm.
because those really ground you to certain default behaviors you can have. Like things like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if we just go with the impression that Japanese people are very polite, that's maybe a potentially safe expectation. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how should I act here? Maybe I should reciprocate that politeness by just being
Mm-hmm.
kind, etc. But I think one really one really important thing here is when you're about to prepare for living in Japan and you're going to start moving there, you're going to start preparing physical items, mentalities, research, whatever. This is also a chance for you to really be aware of how you would act, more so
Mm-hmm.
than observing the country itself or the people around you. The thing is, the reason why we really care about our environments is because at a more atomic level, we really care about how they influence us. Like that's the big one.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have really, this wouldn't have been a problem. The thing is, we like to create expectations on the basis that they will protect us from the most extreme negative parts
Mm-hmm.
of a
Mm-hmm.
foreign environment. And
Yep.
I don't want to degrade, or sorry, not that's the wrong word. Sorry. I don't want to generalize everyone's experiences in moving to Japan or any country as,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what you will research out there is what will happen. No,
Yeah.
that's not correct. Um, because that's setting yourself up for a prophetic fallacy. That's a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, not only should you have no expectations, but you should maintain a constant awareness of how you act in that environment, because one, that is a facet of your behavior that sometimes you need other people to tell you, like you need to be in this condition for you to act this way. And then two,
Mm-hmm.
you also need to know how that relationship would work and if you're comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is bringing up, like, cases of tourists just not really respecting the culture that they're in. That's a
Yeah.
very simple example, but
Yep.
for those who are going to be in that moment where they're like, oh shit, I'm going to be in Japan, am I going to act well? I mean, am I going to fit in? Am I going to fit in
Mm-hmm.
well? I'm sure you will fit in, because you've already taken the first step, which is being aware of how you will act. So
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
once you become more vigilant about that specific phase, I think you will do just fine. And if you're gonna mess up in one of these like physical items, like Japanese people are kind enough to help out. So like you should be fine. Like
Yeah.
you should be
Yeah.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think for our friend who is asking us this question, you're gonna be great.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations on your
It'd be
job.
just fine.
You're gonna kick major ass. And
Mm-hmm.
and I I mean, wait, you know this person personally, or is it like more like a DM
It's
from
like
somebody,
a yeah. It's like
acquaintance?
a online friend.
Okay. Okay. So how about this? Like, if you show them this episode, get them to send a picture of us. Sorry, send them a picture uh, of a selfie with them and a bottle of Pocari Sweat, so that they know that.
Oh my God!
So that we
yeah.
know.
Yes.
So that we know that they've watched the episode. So
yes. Yes.
so hopefully that our advice here and our ramblings and rants have helped in some way. So yeah. Hashtag Pocari Sweat, boys. Of course, the only acceptable non-alcoholic drink on the show, Kanpai Chronicles, with the word Kanpai in the name.
Nectar of the gods. Now I need to go find some to stock up.
I'm going.
Next episode, I'll just crack a Pocari Sweat.
Crack a Pocari Sweat. That sounds. You want to crack a sweat with the boys?
Hey.
I gotta go back to Don Quixote in the city, the one that recently opened. I'm pretty sure they have Pocari Sweat, so hopefully I can get that. So yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, I feel like there's got to be a market here.
With that being said, on a lighter note, we'll leave it to Pocari Sweat and save it for the next episode. That brings us to the end of this episode of Kanpai Chronicles with your host Norman and
Holly.
And thank you for listening to us on all sorts of topics. We started off on a very dirty note in this time, but
oh my God!
Hopefully we ended it on a better one, and to take you away from all the imagery of monkeys in the water, etc. We'll leave that to your imagination. But if you wanna support us, you can always reach out to us either on the Twitters or comment to us on the YouTube video version, as well as subscribe on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whichever or wherever you get your podcasts. So with that being said, thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.